Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schwab Coaching. My name is Cameron May. I'm a Senior Manager of Trading and Derivatives Education here at Schwab. And this is getting started with Thinkorswim. And just a few weeks ago, just a few videos ago, we started a new series of lessons, 8 intended lessons that are designed to take a new user of Thinkorswim all the way from their first experience of downloading and navigating the platform, all the way to becoming quite familiar with most of the tools and resources. And last week we talked about the monitor tab. Today we're moving on to what probably is going to prove to be one of the favorite presentations in this series. We're talking about the charts tab on Thinkorswim. Going to be acquainting ourselves with that in good detail. A lot to cover. Before I can get to any of that, though, let me first of all say hello to everybody who's already chatting in out there on YouTube. Great to see so many familiar people and names as it always is. Hello there, Tony and Sean, Rachel, Eva, Rusty. Who else is here? We have, everybody else. Thanks for joining us week after week. Really appreciate your attendance and your contributions to these discussions. Also, I want to welcome anybody that might be here for the very first time. Great to have you on board. And if you're watching on the YouTube archive after the fact, enjoy the presentation. Be aware that you're invited to join us in the live discussion. This is a Wednesday webcast series, and we kick things off promptly at 2 Eastern time. We'd love to have you here in the live stream audience. And as a special treat, as always, for my live stream audience members, I have my very good friend Kevin Horner. He's going to be hanging out in the chats, addressing any questions that I can't get to. Kevin and I have been working together now for years. He's great to have here. So thanks for having my back there, Kevin. And Kevin and I would also like to issue an invitation to everybody watching. If you have an account on the platform known as X, you should be following your favorite presenters there on X. It's the best place to connect with us in between these live streams. You can find Kevin there at Kevin Horner CS. You can find me on X at Cameron May CS. All right, but let's get into this introduction to the charting features on Thinkorswim. But as we do, of course, we need to pause to consider the risks associated with trading and investing. Risks are real, so bear these important disclosures in mind. The information here is for general informational purposes only and should not be considered an individualized recommendation or endorsement of any particular security, chart pattern, or investment strategy. Schwab does not recommend the use of technical analysis as the sole means of investment or research, and investing involves risks, including the loss of principal. All right, so here's where we find ourselves in our webcast series. We kicked things off 3 weeks ago, with Lesson 1, downloading and navigating Thinkorswim. This platform can be downloaded free of charge from within your Schwab Online account. You just go to the Trade tab, look for the keyword Thinkorswim, and then click on the blue button. That's just a little bit further down that next screen. In any case, then we moved on to the monitor tab, covered the trade tab. I got a little bit out of order there in my spoken sequence here. I said we covered the monitor tab in the last video. This is actually the trade tab. But in any case, today is all about charts. So we're going to go to the platform. We're going to navigate the charts, and I want to just go left to right, top to bottom, get acquainted with as much functionality as I can. So we'll try to do this at a pace that everybody can follow in a way that everybody can track. So let's go right to the Thinkorswim desktop platform. And once we log into the platform, very commonly we find ourselves on the monitor tab, but I'm going to go right now to the charts tab, and let's load up our example chart for the day. So as we've already determined with elsewhere on the platform, if we know the symbol, we can just type in the symbol of the stock. If we want to chart a stock where we're not sure of a symbol, we can just start typing in the name. So for example, let's use Citigroup. You know the name of the company, but we don't know the symbol. We can just start typing in Citigroup, and this menu will appear that will propose some potential symbols. And right there at the top, there's Citigroup Incorporated, the common shares. Let's click on that, and that loads up our chart. Now, I'm going to be making all sorts of customizations to this chart. Eva, did you encounter some buffering? If there is a little bit, just hang in there. Sometimes there can be a little bit of an issue. Could be on your end, could be on our end. It happens. Technology is not perfect, but we usually get any technical hiccups addressed pretty quickly. I definitely appreciate the support of our technology crew, our production crew behind the scenes. Anyway, so we can type in our symbol. Another thing that we need to be aware of is the little arrow here right next to that symbol box. We can click on that, and that can give us access to a bunch of other lists that might be handy for different symbols grouped by different types. So for example, this just has, we can see our recent symbols that we've selected. We can go to our current positions. We can look at, for example, the symbols for different indices. If a trader is just trying to get quickly acquainted with what's going on with the markets, they might just click on the little drop-down menu, go to the Indices tab. Right here at the top, we can see the NASDAQ Composite. That can be loaded quickly. Or we could go to the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Or if we scroll down a little bit further down the list, we'll find the S&P 500. As a matter of fact, what I'll typically do is just zip right down to the bottom. And there it is. Of course, if we know the symbol, we could just type that in. But I wanted to make sure that everybody's familiar with those sorts of little navigational tips that we don't always discover immediately. Just to the right of that, we have the linking feature that we've already acquainted ourselves with, but this allows us to link the charts, in this case, to other tools and features on the rest of the platform. So for example, if we have, and I'll just clear out this comment here for our scratch pad, it was for a different webcast series, but in any case, let's say that we have a watch list in the left column here. If we've selected the same symbol link, meaning the same color, the same number as we have here just to the right of the symbol box in our charts, well then if we click on something in the left column in our watch list, so for example, if I click on Meta, it will load up a chart of Meta because those two functions are now linked. That's how quick and simple that linking is. But let's go back to Citigroup. Let's close up that left column and just start to get familiar with the rest of these things that are accessible right up here. And I'm just going to move left to right. We'll go over through most of these tabs. There might be one or two that I leave for other discussions or make suggestions of other videos that might be watched that cover those in more detail. We'll move our way down the right column, over to the left, and then we'll circle back in and look at some features that are actually embedded in the charts themselves. All right, so just to the right of our linking, we see the name of the company. We can see what the current price is, $95.63.5 for Citigroup as of this moment. This tells us how much it's up or down in numerical or dollar terms and percentage terms. So I can see trading at 95.66. That's up $1.66 from yesterday, or 1.77%. We see the bid and the ask price, current quote details for Citigroup. And just down below that, I see some additional information. Here's a quick reminder of the symbol, accompanied by a reminder of the chart time frame. So I can see that this is a 1 year daily, 1 day chart, and this stock is traded on NYSE. Just to the right of that, I can see a few acronyms, DOHLCRY. So D is obviously the date, and that's the date for whatever candle we happen to be pointing at. So Sidika says, or Sid, sound like you go by Sid, how can we link charts with our positions with one click? So actually, that would be right up here through that menu. Now, another thing that we can do, Sid, we don't see this on our paper money, but there is a chart setting where we can just say, just show the position on a chart all the time. So that would be right up here. I don't mind a little bit of a sidebar because it's on track with what we want to cover today. But in our general chart settings, we can show orders on paper money. But in our real accounts, we can also show existing positions. Just have that pop in by default. So that, does that do one better? It's a 0-click function once it's set up. Anyway, so what do the OHLC stand for, and what are these associated with? Well, as I mentioned, as we're moving around the chart, what's actually happening here up in that upper left is it's telling us the details of whatever candle we've settled on. So for example, if I just take my hand off the mouse, and then I look up in the upper left-hand corner, I can see, looks like I've settled on the March 19th candle, March 19th, 2025, the opening price of which was $70.36. The high is $72.18. The low is $69.67. The close is $71.44. So OHLC for open, high, low, close. That menu just popped up on me. Anyway, let me go back to 319. There we go. What's the R? I think OHLC relatively intuitive. The R is the range in price from high to low. So if the high was $72.18, the low was $69.67, the distance between those two is $2.51. And then finally, we have something called the Y value. And the Y value is just really wherever the tip of my cursor is at that moment. So if you look at the little crosshairs where my cursor is positioned and you follow those off to the right, you'll see in gray it says 79.95. Well, that's just because my cursor happens to be sitting at at the 79.95 level. I'm going to go over here to the right so we can get a closer visual association between the cursor position and the cursor value. But as I move up the y-axis, so when we're looking at a typical chart, we have the y-axis is the vertical axis, and then the x-axis is the horizontal axis. In any case, as I move up that y-axis, my y value is changing, and you'll see that change here. You'll also see it change in the bubble on that y margin. And as I move down, that value goes down, and that for a trader can be quite useful if they're just looking, oh, I wonder what the price was here, or here, or here. We can see that in a glance. So now we know what all of this stuff is. Now let's move over here to the right, and there's a share function. Now, traders are creative people. A lot of people are. And they can come up with lots of different ways to view a chart, adding technical indicators, looking at different time frames. And sometimes they want to communicate that to other traders, but they'd rather not have to just describe it. Sometimes we like to share our charts. So we can click on share and actually just create a link and share that. If I click share, we'll see that, a URL appears. Now, I could then send that to another trader. They do not go to their internet and drop it in their browser URL bar. Instead, that would be opened by going up here to the upper right and selecting open shared item. And what that specifically does is it brings up that chart. Now, what it does not do is give your friend, the trader that we just shared with, any access to our account. Nope, doesn't do that. It's not a portal into our platform. It just captures the structure of that chart and lets it be, and allows it to be duplicated on another Thinkorswim platform. All right, so let's continue. We have that share function. As we move further into these tools, I'm going to hit the pause button on the presentation here for just a moment because I just noticed that there is a survey that's been added to our chat window. So if you would do us this favor, whenever you see a survey pop into the chat, click on the survey link. That'll activate the survey. Then you can fill it out at the end of the webcast when you can give us some honest feedback. But I'll tell you a couple of things about that survey. First of all, it's a very short survey, 2 multiple choice questions, and then a comments box and a suggestion box. So it takes seconds to fill that thing out. But I also want to let you know that our coaches pay close attention to those survey comments and that data. I look through the data, I read through the comments, and it helps. So it's never a wasted effort. Okay. Thank you for doing that. Happy Camper had a question there. Okay, so it looks like that's already being addressed potentially by Kevin. Rather than going back and read through the message chain, I'll let you work that out with Kevin. But moving here to the right, this tends to be kind of a favorite tool within a favorite tool. This little flask icon allows the trader to add technical studies or indicators to their chart, either directly applied to the price itself or as what's called a lower study down below the chart. So let's add one just as an example. I'm going to click on Edit Studies. And off to the left here, we see this alphabetical order. These are displayed in alphabetical order. List of studies. There are over 400. So if you have a favorite technical indicator, because there are hundreds of them out there, it's probably here. I can't say for sure, but I know that the odds are strong, knowing the world of technical analysis as I do. So how about, just as an example, let's add a simple moving average. We could go down in alphabetical order and find simple moving average, or we can do a keyword search, which is what I'm doing now, and that just limits the list of studies that are selected. So let's choose simple moving average, and then to apply that to our chart, we're going to add that. This one is one of those that's added directly to the price chart. If it's a lower study, it'll be down here as lower. So for example, maybe let's throw on a MACD. How about a MACD histogram? Let's add that. But these can also be customized using Thinkorswim charts. So by default, as an example, when we load up a simple moving average, and that's, if you're not familiar with moving averages, they're trend lines that might act as an indication of price direction, but also support and resistance levels. But in any case, we can customize things as we can customize on other features. We talked about the monitor tab, we talked about the trade tab, we talked about the scan tab, and how we can customize using little gears. Yeah, we could customize this one. Let's say that our trader doesn't want just 9 days worth of data. Maybe they want to look at the last 50 days to generate their trend line. Let's click OK, click Apply, and that's now added our indicators to our chart. Now, we can remove those by going back up here and clicking the X. How about we take off the MACD as example? Or we can hide them by clicking on the little eyeball. Now watch this. If I click Apply, they both disappeared. But hey, what if I want my moving average back? I just uncheck the eyeball, click Apply again. There it is. All right, so I'm going to let you explore those technical indicators that can be added to the charts, but that's how it would be done. Now, we have access to something called the chart settings. Lots of people prefer their charts to have a black background rather than the white background. They like their candles to be green rather than white. Lots of different ways that we might, I didn't want to click on that. We want to click on the little gear icon, chart settings icon. In any case, this is just generally to apply settings such as display current positions. That was something that somebody asked about earlier in this presentation. So let's make a couple of adjustments that are pretty common. First of all, I'm going to go to the time axis. So we're making an adjustment to, that time axis of the chart. One thing is, for some traders, they like to see extra space out here to the right so that their rightmost candle isn't just bumping into that Y margin. How about we put in the number 10 here? So we're creating an expansion area of 10 bars to the right of the chart. If I click Apply, you'll see now I have that white space. Now, another function that's commonly added as a general chart setting for our options traders, they might check the box for Show Expiration Friday so that they can see a visual reference point for each of those traditional third Friday of the month expiration cycles. I can click Apply here, and we see this most recent one was July 18th. Now, another thing that some traders like to see are the little icons that will tell us when an earnings announcement is upcoming, if there's been a recent stock split, those sorts of things that are known generically as corporate actions, actions that can be taken by a corporation that can affect stock prices. And that can be done since that affects the stock or the equity value. We go to the Equity tab, and I'm going to check the box for Show Corporate Actions. And if I click Apply here, now we can see, hey, here's an icon for a recent earnings announcement. We can also see that there is a dividend payment coming up here in the near future. But anyway, those are sorts of general chart settings that can be changed. And don't be afraid to come in here, poke around, play around with it on your simulated trading platform on Paper Money, because you can't make any mistakes that cost any real money on Paper Money. Anyway, so let's click OK. So those are our chart settings. Here are our time frames. This is where we can change this from the 1 year daily chart to maybe an hourly chart or a weekly chart. So when we go to those time frames, we have a list of default favorites. Now those are customizable. We can customize that list. If we click here, we can choose, a different time frame. Let's add a time frame. How about in this case, maybe our trader likes to see things tick by tick. So I'm going to click on the tick box, and maybe our time interval is just 1 day, but we want to see every single little tick. So I'm going to go down all the way down to 1 tick, and we're going to add that to our list. This is a 1-day tick chart. That's now going to be a default. And if I apply that here, let's go ahead and click OK. And let's go to that 1-day tick chart. I can now see every tick for Citigroup, and you'll see that chart move as price advances. So we could have chosen other combinations of chart time frame and candle construction. This one was literally one tick at a time. but explore that tool. Maybe create your own customized list. Next up, we have the chart style. The chart style refers to generally, are we looking at a candle chart? Are we looking at a line chart? Are we looking at a Heikin Ashi candle chart, which is something that we discussed in one of my recent webcasts? Let's switch up our style here. And what I'm going to do is let's first take off our moving average. Let's go back to our edit studies and just click the X, click apply. That's gone. Just a cleaner chart again. And I'm going to change my style here. When I click on style, I can go to my current chart type and change this from a candle to, let's say, a line chart. Line chart simply connects each day's closing value to the next, and it creates a solid line. And for some traders, that might clear up some of the day-to-day clutter of all the intraday activity and sort of simplify the view of the chart. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a better view, it's a different view. So we can change those chart styles right there. We can even, if we want to, let's say that we prefer to see, I don't know, maybe our view of the S&P 500 with a line chart, just a simpler view. But maybe when we're looking at equities, individual stocks, maybe we prefer to see those using a candle chart. And maybe we prefer a different time frame. Let's say that our typical view of the S&P 500 is done on a daily chart with a line. But when we're looking at a stock, let's go back to Citi. I'm going to change its style back to a candle and its time frame to, let's say, let's go for a 3-month daily chart. Right? So this is different. So what we might want to do here is save this style. I'm going to save this chart style, and I'm just going to call it my equity 3-month candle chart, whatever we want to call it. Or if equity is too fancy of a broker speak word, we'll just say it's our stocks 3-month candle chart. I'm going to save that. So then if I've gone to the S&P and I've switched that all up, let's say I've put that on my 1-year preferred view, I've switched that from a candle to a line, and now I've gone to Citi and I want to see that 3-month candle, I go up to style and load up that style I just saved. Boom, there we go. Ed says, I'd love to see a daily chart that shows close with an offset of -1. See, that's right. Okay, I know the charting pretty well, and I'm pretty sure that feature does not exist. Let's go back here to a 1-year daily chart, get more in the comfort zone, I think, of a lot of people. So be aware with those chart styles, we can set up custom styles. We have access to our other tools through this menu. I'll let you explore that menu. I'd love to show every single function, every single feature on a chart, but I want to make sure that we touch on maybe some of those that, at least in my perspective, at least in my experience, have been among the most commonly used. And also guiding that are some of the most common questions that I get. Next up, fun one, we have our drawings tool. So we have a whole menu. If I go to drawings and I go down to drawing tools, we'll see this whole menu of icons of potential drawings. And when we first try to do drawings, it can feel a little bit clunky if we haven't ever done it before. Just know that whether we're drawing a line or we're drawing a rectangle or an oval, it's just click once to start the drawing wherever we want to start it. So pick our initial position, click there, and then go to where we want to end the drawing and click again. So probably the most commonly used drawing tool is our trend line tool. Now I've kind of cheated. Let me choose trend line. And if I were to draw a trend line here, and as I mentioned, we click once where we want to start a line. Let's say that our trader has noted that there was a downward slope here, lower highs for Citigroup, and they were watching for a break of that slope as maybe a signal that things are turning around. They might go to the top of that, click once. Now notice my hand is not, I'm not going to do a click and drag. That's a different feature on the charting. It's a click and then a separate click, not a click and drag from one point to the next. So let's move down, position that line where we like it, and click again. And as I was saying, I kind of cheated because when you draw your very first line on Thinkorswim, it's not going to be this very artistic dashed blue thick line. It's going to be a thin black line. It's going to look like this. So let's do this. I'm going to right click on that line. And actually, when we've drawn a line, we can change the properties of a line. We can erase the line. So we could remove the drawing if we wanted to. I want to edit its properties. So by default, when you draw your first line, it's actually going to be a black line that is solid. And it has a width of 1 out of 5 instead of 3 out of 5. And that's the default. So I'm going to save that as my default. So when I'm drawing lines now, you'll notice, hey, they're all these thin black lines. So how do you get it back to that blue dash line if that's the trader's preference? Right click, edit the properties, change those properties, and then save it as a default. And then from then on, anytime we draw a line on whatever symbol, whatever chart, and at any time in the future, we can shut down Thinkorswim, come back. All these settings changes that we've made, all these preferences changes that we've made, they just save. They're saved. Okay. S says, can we draw a line to get the percentage that a stock has moved in a given period of time? Very good question, S. As a matter of fact, that's built into the drawing tool. So for example, I wonder how far Citigroup moved from down here to up there. Well, if I start drawing a line and just move it up there, before I make that second click, actually, I'm a little bit too far off. Little bit too far. Let me remove this drawing just so we can get a little bit more space so you can see this a little more clearly. But if you look down there at the anchor point of that drawing, you'll see this drawing that I've made is 153 days long. That's 106 trading days or bars. 49% increase at a 32-degree change. That's $27.85 up. So there we go. Yeah, you can do that. And actually, if you want to, you can just make that permanent. Right click, edit the properties. And let's see, it's been a little while since I did this, but let's see, show the label. There we go. We can show it just as when we're pointing at a line, or we can always have it displayed. So let me just click OK. There you go. I'm going to edit its properties. Back to never. All right, very good question. Let's remove that drawing. As a matter of fact, we've got a cluttered chart now. We can actually just clear the whole drawing set. This just cleans off all the drawings that we've made and give us a nice clear view again. So those are the drawing tools. Feel free to experiment with those and look to see what else is available here. We can delete a drawing set if we've saved one as a default on our chart. But in any case, now we have a different access point to the same set of studies that we have here. So we can edit, remove, customize studies here. We can also access those studies very quickly right here using sort of a menu-driven approach. So instead of just having a big, long alphabetized list, I can choose from a menu of categories of studies. So for example, our simple moving average, we might use a moving average group, and we can find it right there. There's our simple moving average. And that quickly adds that study to that chart. Now, up here where it says, up here under this study feature, I've had questions before when I point at the first two items in this menu. I get the same menu. Quick study and add study appear to be entirely redundant. They're not entirely redundant. Here's the deal with quick study. This is just a quick way to add one study to the chart. If we decide we want a different study, it quickly removes the current study and replaces it. It only adds a single study. So S says, what does HOLD stand for? Good question. S, if you have a question about any of our tools or resources or trading techniques or whatever, one thing that you might want to do, let me make a suggestion to everybody here, is to make sure, if you haven't done this already, go down and click on the subscribe button right now. You can click, it's down there in the lower right-hand corner. It only takes a second to do that. It subscribes you to our YouTube, our Trader Talks Schwab Coaching webcast channel on YouTube. But this is where we house our playlist of previous webcasts. And those are actually searchable by keywords. So for example, a Hull moving average is a different type of trend line moving average, constructed differently than like a simple moving average and exponential moving average. So I'm just going to type in Hull here, and let's see if anybody's done a recent discussion. Hey, what do you know? Hull moving averages, what they are and how to trade them. So that one merited a full discussion. So you may want to check that out. Okay. But back to our studies here. When using this menu, if I were to select a different study, so how about we use, I don't know, a momentum study. Let's go back to our MACD histogram that we had before. This is actually going to remove the study that's already on the chart and replace it. So we no longer have our simple moving average, but we have our MACD. So we can quickly add studies, but only one at a time. And that's the way some traders prefer it. They don't want their chart to be cluttered. They just want to look at one thing at a time. If we want multiples, then we go to add a study. So it doesn't replace the current one, it adds one. So for example, maybe now we go back to our moving averages, pop down to simple moving average, and there's our 9-period moving average. Now, these are quick. They're not the way that we customize. If we want to customize these studies, we go back over here to edit studies. Now, next up, okay, let's clear things up. Let's go up to studies. We can save a set of studies if we like, and then load that set of studies. You'll notice that I have quite a few because I teach a webcast series. It's called Advanced Charting Techniques. So we use different combinations of studies. So as an example, maybe my trend value momentum strategy set. If I load that up, it just brings up that list of studies. Heather says, what's the difference? That's a great question, Heather. What's the difference? Because when I was using Thinkorswim initially, this one bugged me. It was a little bit murky to me. What's the difference between a study set and a style? Well, a style, think of it this way, it's all the other parts of the chart that aren't studies or technical indicators. So, for example, looking at different time frames is a style. Looking at a candlestick versus a line chart is a style of chart. So, and just making those sorts of changes to the chart can be saved as a style. So when we save as a style, so for example, maybe I want to, let's get our other study set back up here. Let's go up to studies, and I can just remove all the studies that I currently have on the chart. Yes, I really want to. And if we were to pop up here and we add in our simple moving average again, and we add in our MACD histogram again, apply those. Well, if I go up and save this as a style now, let's save this style, and I might call this my moving average plus MACD plus what other elements here? It's a 1-year daily chart. Plus it's a candle. Anyway, I'm just describing to myself what this style looks like. I can check the box here that says include any patterns, but also include the study set. So I can save all of the elements of the chart right there. Yeah, that's the difference. Saving the study set is only saving, for example, the moving average and the MACD, and I could go look at a different chart, maybe go to a weekly chart and load up a MACD and a moving average on that weekly time frame. That would just be studies. Anyway, I hope that's helpful for you. Next, we have patterns. I'm not going to get much into patterns. For some traders, they like to look for specific candle patterns. They like to look for specific price patterns like bull flags and things like that. Candle patterns like hammers or dojis, morning star patterns. It has been my experience, the tool is fine, but it's been my experience that those sorts of things are largely in the eye of the beholder. So, like, Kevin's definition of a flag may be slightly different than my definition of a flag. The way that he sees them and identifies them, the way that I see them, identify them. It's hard to standardize those and have the charts automatically find the flag that you're thinking of. So rather than getting deeply into that, I'm just going to suggest you can play around with it if you like. It's a fairly intuitive tool in my experience, but generally I think a trader who uses those sorts of things probably does them visually. Anyway, next up, I want to move over here to these buttons. Not going to go deeply into these, but I want to explain how they work, how to turn them on, how to turn them off. First of all, trade button. If I click on that, you're going to see a series of buttons up here at the top where we can now trade our stock. We still have our chart down below. Matter of fact, let's clean up that chart. Let's go up to studies. Let's remove all of our studies. So we have a just nice clean chart down there again. But we can buy the stock. We can sell the stock. We can do something called cancel, reverse, flatten. Reverse the position means if I own 10 shares, sell those, and then reverse me into 10 short shares. All right. Flatten means get me out of everything and cancel any open stop orders. We can change the quantity here. We can change the order type and the time in force. So that's what that trade button is. Just know that to access it, we click on the button once, and there it is, and it will stay there. We shut down Thinkorswim. We come back the next time. It's still going to be there. To turn it off, we just click on that. Now that we know that, I want to point out that if we ever accidentally click the C for chart, this is what we get. Oh my goodness, if I load up Ford, I got nothing. What's happening? My chart's broken. No, it's because we've turned this off. Let's turn the chart back on. And as counterintuitive as it is, yes, sometimes people do turn off the chart so they can use the other features without seeing the chart. Okay. But we can access our time and sales. If you're not familiar with time and sales, this is literally just giving a tick-by-tick breakdown of trades that are happening or that have happened on Citigroup. The size of the trade, the price of the trade, the time the trade executed. We can see something known as the Active Trader tool, which is a tool that's designed to interact nicely with price and allow the trader to very quickly place orders of all sorts of different types. This is a customizable tool. It's a tool that's deep enough that, again, it merited its own discussion here. So what I would suggest you do, if you have an interest in that tool, go do a keyword search for Active Trader. And what do you see right here? Plan, click, trade, a guide to the Active Trader tool on Thinkorswim. All right, let's turn that one off. Our buttons is another trade feature. Difference here is now our chart is over to the left. We have the buttons off to the right. We can buy and sell shares, cancel, reverse, flatten right there. Or I'm gonna skip over charts and down one more. Just to show you that we can also have buy, sell down at the bottom. So we can put it up at the top with trade. We can have buttons to the right, or we can have the dashboard down at the bottom. Okay. Now, option chain for you options traders can be loaded up just below the charts, and it's tradable just the same way we would trade just using the normal options chain. We have level 2 quotes that can be accessed right here. And then finally, a news feed. This would be specific to our charted symbol. All right, so that's gotten us acquainted with these right-hand features. Just experiment with those, turn them on. Just remember to turn them off. You just click on the same tab again. Now, finally, down below, we have some additional tools. We have our active drawing tool. Right now, I'm set to draw lines. I can access my other drawing tools. So for example, if I wanted to draw a rectangle, let's choose rectangle, go to where I want to start the rectangle, click once, move to where I want to finish the rectangle, click again, and there's my rectangle. I can right click on that and remove that drawing. I can right click on this one and remove that drawing. I can also change my crosshairs arrangement. You'll notice as I'm moving up and down left to right, I have a vertical crosshair and a horizontal crosshair. I suppose a combination of which is why we call them crosshairs. In any case, this can allow me to line up a date with a price. Not everybody uses that feature. Maybe they only want to see dates. Maybe they only want to see price, or they just don't want to see anything at all. As we're moving around now, we don't have those crosshairs following us. Let me turn that back on. Here is our right expansion settings feature. What that does is it creates this white space again. So if I click on this, it allows me to change the right expansion settings. Right now we have those 10 bars that we added before. Let's blow that out to 15. Click apply. Now we have a little bit more room to work with here, and click OK. We have some zooming features, and this I want to tie into, I said that there were some embedded features within the charts. So just remember, as we're pointing at the chart, instead of doing a left click to make a drawing, we can do a right click that accesses a new menu. This will give us access to those drawings if we want to, but it also gives us access to all of these other tools that we're now familiar with. Okay, but let's talk about this zoom. I can zoom in by clicking on the little magnifying glass. I can zoom out. What that does is just it zooms in on the most recent time frame and then zooms back out again. Well, sometimes a trader wants to get a closer look at a historical time frame. So, for example, maybe I want to see what happened first part of 2025. Here, all you need to do is do a left click, a normal left click, as though we're going to start a drawing, but instead we're going to do a click and drag. And however far I drag that, it's highlighting a period of time, and it's going to zoom in on that period of time as soon as I release that click. So let's just stop right there, and it's going to zoom in. Now we're looking at just that time frame, and you can see that down below, and I can retreat to earlier by clicking and dragging the scroll bar at the bottom, or I can advance further by dragging off to the right. I can also use finer movements using the left and the right arrows. There we go. Now, once I'm done with that feature, I can zoom back out using the zoom out button again, or we can just double click on the chart. Double click on the chart, pops it right back to the full view of whatever chart time frame we had. But guys, that I think is a pretty good, thorough introduction to this tool. We've covered a lot of territory. I hope you found some new tools if you're a veteran user of thinkorswim. If you're brand new to this, I hope you're not too overwhelmed by how much functionality there is here. But we've acquainted ourselves, I think, with just about every feature that most new users of the tool would want to know. So hope that's been helpful for you. We're going to continue our lesson series next time, moving on to the scan tab, lesson 5. Oh, Sadika just asked a great question. Yes. Can we see two different stocks on the same chart? Yes. So we're going to talk about scan. Let me go back to that. Good point. Right up there. See this, Sadika? This little rectangle up here is known as the chart grid. If I click on that, it allows me to choose different arrangements of charts. So we can have them in a row. We can have them in rows and columns, but each one of these is individually usable, just like any other chart. Let's load up General Electric here. Actually, a GE Aerospace. Anyway, and we can, if we click on the little menu in the upper right of any of these, each one of these individual charts they're known as what's called a cell, just our fancy term for them. If we maximize one of those, now we're seeing just that chart, but we can access the other ones by using the little arrows up here. That goes to the next cell. You'll see the little red box going to the next one. This one we're not using yet. And then if we want to go back to seeing all four, use the back button. And if we want to go back to just one, we don't need the cells anymore, just choose one. Great question. Thank you. I think that was a valuable addition to this webcast. So thanks for asking the question. But time for me to let you go, everybody. Thanks for giving me your time today. Make sure that you have subscribed to our Trader Talks channel. If you haven't done that yet, just go down and click on the subscribe button. It doesn't cost anything. Only takes a second. Make sure that you're following Kevin and me on X. You can find Kevin on X at Kevin Horner CS. You can find me on X at Cameron May CS. It's the best place to connect with me in between these live streams and to get the most current information from me between the live streams. So for example, I recently did a webcast on Heikin Ashi candles. So I asked my followers have you ever used these in your trading? And if you're not familiar with them, here's the introduction to Heikin-Ashi candles versus traditional candles. So yeah, another great resource. It's available to you right there. But hey, thanks everybody. I'll give you a final reminder, fill out that survey. Click on that survey link. Give me some honest feedback. I'll read through that. It always helps. And thank you to everybody that's already clicked the thumbs up. That's always appreciated. I can see over 100 people watching. 46 have already clicked the thumbs up. That's always appreciated. It's a pat on the back to the presenter, and it gives us a boost in the YouTube algorithm. But everybody, go have a great rest of your day. I will see you in tomorrow's webcast. I also hope to see you in next Wednesday in this webcast series. But whenever I see you again, till that moment arrives, I want to wish you the very best of luck. Happy trading. Bye-bye.